Hello and welcome to this episode of Pause with Nandini. I am very, very pleased to have an old friend and an emerging leader in the blockchain space with me today. Gaurav Somvanshi is here, perhaps with his greatest challenge of his life, which is explaining to me what blockchain is all about. He is the CEO and co founder of Emertech Innovations Private Limited, which is committed to bring about social good through the use of emerging technologies such as blockchain and IoT. He's a graduate from IIM Lucknow and a computer science engineer. He's a Dalai Lama Fellow. He has conducted workshops all over the world, as I see now, but for government, for other educational institutions. He is also a leadership in innovation fellow with Royal Academy of Engineering, UK. He's a weekly columnist on blockchain for one of the largest newspapers in Marathi. He's also a social activist, writer, and independent researcher. He has written in Hatred in the Belly, along with many other articles that he's published in Roundtable India. And he has recently also launched his book on blockchain in Marathi, which is published by Madhushri Publications, and it's called Sakhliche Swatantra. I'm sure I've not pronounced it properly. I'll wait for him to correct me. And
Okay.
with that, welcome to the show, Gaurav. Lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, Nandini, and it feels good to reconnect after a long time. And platforms like this and documentation like this is very important. It's very critical, especially for the work that we are trying to do, whether it's technology or activism. So thank you so much for this initiative and opportunity.
Absolutely. Let's just jump right into it. First of all, your work with Emertech Innovations. I know you founded the company, was it 2019?
Yes,
And
2019.
in the blockchain space, and perhaps you're doing other things now, but one of the things that I read was the agro trust work that you have, which crops specific integrated value chain with blockchain technology. Now you'll have to translate that into English for me.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I think blockchain as a journey has a like in the blockchain world, the best thing is you can go to anyone and ask them what is their blockchain story because everyone has a interesting story to come up with it. So my journey with startup or with Imatech Innovations begins much earlier in 2017 when I started doing the corporate stint. So just to talk about briefly, I did my computer science engineering in 2011, and although people think that there is some connection between my graduation and the work that I'm doing right now, that's completely not true. It's actually a myth that I use because when I want to say that yes, I work in blockchain, I say that yes, I've done computer science, but there's no connection between those two because first of all, I've never done computer science during my. I'd never studied well. It's possible to get by, without studying and still passing. And the only reason that all of this thing happened is so the reason even I got into IIM management was because I could not code. I did not want to code. I could not code. And then suddenly IIM was something I was pushed into because I could not go into. And then suddenly for 2 or 3 years, I ran an NGO, in fact, by the name of Carl Sagan, Saganite Science Education Association. I did not take up a corporate job. I wanted to popularize science education. And then all of that kind of was financially draining, especially with the EMIs for the student loan. And I had to do something which I had been actively trying not to do, which was a corporate job. And prior to that, I had a startup um with great people on their profiles, but startup failed completely in 2015. And then I needed some sort of confidence, some sort of source of finances. And then I decided to go into corporate as a senior consultant for PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. But the best part was over there, the client that I had, Mr. Alex Paul Menon, and my colleague, Mr. Manish Sharma, uh, uh, it was the exact opposite of what you would expect from a corporate in terms of there are so many major problem statements, and it was a complete open field that you see how you want to solve it. And it was in the government of Chhattisgarh back then. And January 2017 is when I moved to Chhattisgarh. And my basically my task was in direct benefit transfers. And people usually say that blockchain is a major solution in search of a problem, but in my case, it was the opposite thing. So what happens is, I'll just talk briefly about how the entire blockchain idea comes into being. Direct benefit transfers is when the government is giving benefits either in cash or in kind, like ration, to citizens. Now, when that is happening, how are you registering the beneficiaries? Whether or not their bank accounts are correct, whether or not they are getting the money that is being promised to them, the welfare that is promised to them, because a lot of fraud happens over there, right? And in order to clean that, to digitize that, that was my basically primary task. One thing I immediately realized that was, uh, there were 26 I noted down 26 departments out of 40 plus departments who would come under this scope of work, and I shortlisted 160 government welfare programs in which you're tracking, in which the government is directly talking with the citizens, G2C as we call it. And after studying that, it was that some government departments were fairly digitized, some were absolutely not. But imagine if there's one citizen, and let's say that citizen is eligible for benefits all across 26 departments, just a hypothetical scenario. Then the current way that it was operating is all 26 departments would be sending their staff on the ground to get that information. And you don't have the guarantee that whether this information will be correct or not. Why? Because the different departments don't share data with each other. And then when I asked this very innocent, childish question, why is it that, let's say, Department A is not sharing data with Department B? That's when I came to know that it's not a Chhattisgarhi problem. It's not a Indian problem or a developing countries problem, but it's a global problem. Even developed countries such as US, Australia, all of them face the same problem, which is that different departments have no means of sharing data with each other. Because first of all, the official reason is there's a lack of trust. That what if Department A changes my bank account details and Department B again changes it again? So if there's only one single database, how do you actually manage who is making the mistakes or mischiefs? Another reason is that it's a violation of privacy. So imagine one database which includes all of my information from my income, caste, religion, my any kind of special status that I would be having, any benefits that I would be getting with a single click of a button. So you have profiling at your fingertips. But the other flip side is, like, let's say there's a uh, widow pension scheme, like one of the schemes in Chhattisgarh. So when a death certificate is generated, at that same moment, there should be a registration in the widow pension scheme. But it's a completely separate process where you have to physically carry around that death certificate, re-register yourself in 3 other places. But if you're telling the government once what is your characteristics in terms of my, let's say, gender, age, caste, and everything, and I'm telling them what has happened with me, whether it's a benefit that I'm eligible to, why do I need to tell all the departments the same thing? That's a simple thing, simple question. And then because I love to read, so parallelly what was happening, I was just reading and randomly, and I have this thing that where I randomly read Wikipedia, and people usually criticize Wikipedia, especially the academics, and I don't know why. I think it's the most powerful source out there, free source, in fact. So during my Wikipedia random reading, I just happened to know, okay, what is Bitcoin? And then I was just like intrigued that why would you have a currency which doesn't have a backing to it? Then who is providing the trust? And then I came to blockchain. And then the blockchain Wikipedia article I read entirely, and there was this idea that in order trust can be used separately from human beings and institutions. That's trust is something that could be mathematically coded into the things. And then suddenly there was this connection. Wait a minute. And this happened within the first month of my job. I realized that maybe if we use blockchain technology, because it's just a way to ensure that whatever your claims are, they are trusted. If I want to make something public, it should be in a trusted manner. If I want to hide something, then that also should be in a trusted manner. And that trust should come from mathematics. The moment you rely on peoples and systems and organizations, that's when you already lost the battle, right? Because there's this in one line what blockchain is. There's this Greek, there's this Latin phrase which basically means who will guard against the guardian, quis custodiet guardianate. It's something like that. Now, because it goes into an infinite paradox. Who will guard against the guardian? Okay, one more guardian. But who will guard against that guardian? One more guardian.
Like who
And
will
so,
police the police? It's one of
yeah,
those
and it will go on because
infinite.
why? You're relying on human beings. But the moment I say no, I am trusting on mathematics to decide what is an objective version of reality, and that reality could mean any kind of information. So suddenly there was this new powerful technology, and then the whole weekend I read about the entire history as much as I could find, and I realized you know what technology is good when it's not just I like we call it, there's this something called technical jugglery. You can just take one technical element, make it more complex, and just throw it around for investors and everyone, and people will like it. There's another kind in which people want to achieve something and it's just not developed yet. And that is the way blockchain happened. So in 1992, there was this movement called cypherpunk movement. And people realized even before internet was a thing, they realized that internet is going to be a thing. And if internet becomes very big, then the government can use, or in big major institutions or corporates can use that power over internet to monitor us, to track us, and to also have, if you make everything digital, they can also track all of our financial happenings in a micro way, which would be a violation of privacy. We are open to manipulation, and as they say, the big brother state. All of that would be made possible by the internet. And so these people came together. It was just a mailing list, a cypherpunk movement. And they said that we are going to ensure that there will be privacy over here. There will be some level of personal individualism. And then that is the movement which began in 1992, which gave birth to blockchain and bitcoins in 2008. So during that entire journey, yeah, people have been trying to build something like Bitcoin on blockchain consistently. It was not that it just popped up out of nowhere and people had no idea. There was DigiCash, Hashcash, BitGold, DigiGold, so many other attempts. Timestamping. So basically, what blockchain is, it just gives you a guarantee that certain information has happened at certain point in time, and what is recorded. So what was recorded before could be garbage, but once it comes into the platform, it cannot be edited. Usually, we talk about any database having CRUD properties like create, read, update, and delete. Those are the four things you can do with a database. Now, if I only if I remove everything and I keep only read and update, then I cannot read or create. Then I'm not updating it and I'm not deleting it. All I can do is create new data and read that data.
So
So
you're
it's a very special
keeping
kind
the
of,
sanctity of what is already there. It cannot be manipulated with.
yes, by anyone, even by the developers, even by the sponsors, by anyone, because that's the way of keeping the data. So imagine like let's say I'm in a room and we have this circular arrangement of chairs, for example. And I'm saying that no, I don't want circular arrangement of chairs. I want a row and columns in chairs. That's all that we are doing with blockchain. We are just rearranging the data and recording in such a way that any tampering, edits, deletes become impossible, because every block of data is chained with the subsequent block of data in such a way that in order to change one, you have to change everything, but everything is mathematically locked. So it becomes impossible to change a long series. And it's just that that data is secure because of mathematics. So it has more to do with mathematics than it has to do with computer science. That's one good thing, because because that's where the power comes from. Because then that's when you know that tomorrow just a brilliant line of code is not going to destroy this, because we are relying on principles as fundamental as 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. 2 plus 2 will always be equal to 4, whether it is a million years ago, a million years later. So that's the source. Then the question happened. So there's this small country which I kind of very strongly advocated for. That country is Estonia. And when I was in with the government of Chhattisgarh, I saw what Estonia was doing. I realized we need to do something over here. Now imagine I have absolutely no way to access developers. There are no blockchain people majorly in India back then, and just an idea. So that's when the story began. So I went on LinkedIn, and thankfully in 2017 for 7 8 months I was not on Facebook, and but I was still addicted to social media, but it was now LinkedIn. So I realized that wait, LinkedIn is the right place to do this. So I went on LinkedIn and I added each and every person in the blockchain world that I could find. So way back then, I had only connections from my management IIM people, like 500, 600. Suddenly, I have 18,000, say 19,000 friends, and they spammed all of them. Like it was just individual spamming. So in my workshop, I show the screenshots also of the first spam that I've sent to people. They were customized spams. They were not like I'll share the screenshots with you. So the first screenshot that I share is an Australian person. In fact, coincidentally, you're also in Australia right now. Dr. Jane Thompson. She's also from Brisbane. So Dr. Jane Thompson, I'm spammed her on I think 6th May 2017 or something. So September. I remember the dates because I show it in every workshop, those screenshots. And I'm telling her that I'm working for Chhattisgarh and I have this brilliant idea, but I don't have any support. And then that is how, see, that's how any startup should work. You have to reach 1,000 people, then you end up talking daily with 100 people, then you end up meeting daily for let's say 1/10 of that, and then 1/10 of that finally goes into meaningful work, which leads into value generation. I was already aware of those ratios. So I just went ahead and started doing this. So I'll talk about Jane's example first. So Dr. Jane and me then started having video calls, and because it was like she was in Australia back then, so I had to manage at times, and then I was just expressing to her my frustrations, my challenges of bringing in a new technology which was out of my scope of work in my job. No one else in India was doing it at that time. And then she said just one time, Gaurav, what if I come to Chhattisgarh and I give those presentations on if I said, Jane, I can't even pay your cab expenses if you come over here. She said, no, 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 no. I am a multimillionaire and it's okay. I'll just come over next week. So that's when I changed my slide and you'll see Jane in Raipur with me. So next week she was there in Chhattisgarh in Raipur, and suddenly she was the one giving presentations. And imagine what happens to my credibility in front of the clients, which is the bureaucracy, that everyone is like, no, maybe you're talking about something serious. I mean, of course I was talking. And
Sometimes
similarly,
we need external
yeah,
validation.
yeah, and most of the time, in fact, and I'm completely okay with that. So for example, and then my next task was, how do I write something about blockchain which could give space to it in implementation at the policy or guidelines level, because you can't work outside the guidelines, right? The guidelines also need
Yes.
to support. And thankfully we were also given the task of writing guidelines and SOPs, which I'd never done before. Like I'm not a policy writer in any sense. So what do? This time I reached out to Professor Edgar Whitley from London School of Economics. So I'm telling Professor Edgar Whitley because he has written about blockchain and policy through his London School of Economics papers. Tell him that I have read everything that you've written, but I have some doubts. And then he said, okay, what are your doubts? And that's how the conversation began. And then he helped me to do all of that work. And of course, I got all the credit
Brilliant.
for that.
That's
Yeah.
just brilliant how you just, it's absolutely
Yeah.
like cold calling people, but prior to that cold calling is all the work that you did on your
Oh,
own.
yeah. Yes, because I realized that the only way that I, rope him in is if I actually do the hard work. Because otherwise, spam doesn't really work on anyone. So when I say spam, I actually meant customized individual messages to thousands. I'm not
And
talking about
obviously,
hundreds.
there's something in there that caught the eyes of the people who needed to read it. And that's
Yeah.
how the story began. All
Yeah.
right. When you did this with the government of Chhattisgarh, and did you actually manage to implement it across all the departments that you set out to do?
Yeah, in fact, you could say actually it doesn't end with Professor Edgar Whitley. There are some important people also who came into the picture. So uh, after that, I had so many problem statements. I had so many challenges. Like this is what needs to be coded. Now, how do I invite the international startups to do it? Right. So I proposed the idea of a hackathon. Like the
I
India's first hackathon sponsored by a government did not happen in Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, or any of those Karnataka, those technically advanced states. It happened in Chhattisgarh. How did it happen? So first I got the sanction for the prize money from the government, because by this time already people were visiting us. We were doing pilots. And then I saw who was the winner of the world's first blockchain hackathon. So London Blockchain Hackathon was won by Genevieve Livell, and Genevieve Livell, she had won it in I think around 2018, and then 2017 it was I think $1 million cash prize.
wow.
And then I just reached out to her and I said, Genevieve, if you just be an online jury for this hackathon, then I would get so much amount of traction. So many people would actually come because you're already famous, right? And we don't have a marketing budget.
But
I
you
have the
have,
price.
I'm just noticing that you have quite the marketing brain.
Yeah, in fact, that's the important part which makes the technical scope possible. So
Okay.
John Webb says that no, I will not be an online jury, Gaurav. I will come there directly. So she flew all the way from London to Raipur. Then when I wanted to do land records, so there's this brilliant person called Christopher Bates in USA, in Indianapolis. To this day, we have never met each other. To this day, he's never been to Chhattisgarh. If you just, but I have dedicated an entire chapter in my Marathi book on him. And if you just, meet him someday, he will be able to speak fluently about the Chhattisgarh land system. We have Khasra number, Basra number, Patwari, Tehsildar, Talati, everything. He knows all the processes because he coded all of that for free just because he wanted to help out. So that is the whole blockchain thing. And then, you know, how do we actually get funds for this entire project? And then it's a very simple idea. See, what blockchain can do in the earlier problem that I mentioned is that it can provide you triggers. For example, let's talk about birth. The moment someone registers for a birth certificate, we will already pre-code within smart contracts what does the certain characteristics and that trigger activate. What do I mean by characteristics? Age, gender, religion, caste, income
What
status.
do you
Those are
mean
the
by, what do you
characteristics.
mean by trigger in this
Yeah.
context?
So triggers, So triggers are events which will activate or deactivate a welfare scheme. Which are those triggers? Birth, death, marriage,
Okay.
migration. These are your major triggers. Your
Incident.
minor triggers are accident, pregnancy, disease. These are your minor triggers. Now, why do I say major and minor? It's not terminology out there. So my client, Mr. Alex Paul Menon, and when we're just studying an entire team at that time, we were just studying the different welfare programs. We realized that they get activated or deactivated based on these events only. So we try to simplify it, make it more generalized. So let's say birth. Now, if birth is associated with certain characteristics, let's say I am from labor department and I am going for a birth certificate for my child. So because I'm from labor department, my child is eligible for a certain scholarship after the age of 6. So the blockchain will remember, yes, the birth has occurred. And
Hmm.
at the 6th birthday, the government will be getting a prompt. Are you paying them the welfare or not? So it's a reverse way. So basically, it was APJ Abdul Kalam who said in 2005, 2006 that India has a next window approach. It's a problem with more developed countries also. That no matter if you go to ask for a service, they will say go to the next window, go to the next window. He said we have a one window approach. That no matter which window you go to, you should be able to get all services. And then that entire project, me and the Alex Polman and the secretary, we wrote it down in a paper. It was circulated to all the states. And just by doing the digitization activities in a state of population 2.6 crores, which is 26 million, um, just by crisscrossing the databases, by realizing the value of having some level of transparency, not complete, which would violate privacy, but some level. We were able to identify 8.4 lakh, 84 lakh fake accounts, which is 8.4 million. So imagine 26 million is the population.
Wow.
The registered beneficiaries are 16 million. Out of the 16 million, 84 lakh were having wrong account numbers. Like the money was going, but we don't know where. And then suddenly it was a big thing. 700 crores were saved for the state. When we stopped all of those accounts, we asked for re-registration. Then we went to the World Bank this time, and this time I was presenting to the World Bank of all of these ideas. And then the World Bank said, yes, it seems like a important initiative. The state doesn't have the funds, so they might as well provide the funds. And then I was leading that World Bank project to make a whole scale project on this. Now, while all of this was happening parallelly, I knew that I never want to be in a corporate. I want to, explore something, challenge myself before corporate is a last resort. So every weekend I was conducting blockchain workshops. And my idea, I already realized that the worst way that you can build a product is as an engineer. If you think like an engineer, you build something, you think it has value, the market will slap you very hard. So it has to be opposite. You just try to understand the domain, understand their problems, and then build something out of that understanding later on. Because as I said, I already had a spectacular failure in startup earlier. So every weekend I was going and talking about blockchain to everyone who would listen, whether it is pharmaceutical industries, whether it is farmers, whether it is automobile industries, fintech industries, anyone who would listen. And then I started doing a lot of workshops just for the students. And it was those workshops which got me into the Dalai Lama Fellowship, because they took cognizance of the workshops that I was taking. And this was during my corporate job every weekend. And one of those weekends happened to be when I was invited at the slum in Santa Cruz, where students without any formal education had developed robotics. So the people had developed robotic hands, some simple drones without any education. So I was a chief guest over there as a motivational speaker. And then I was talking there that about how did I make this happen, the World Bank project, what the blockchain can change things. And then the farmers from Nashik region were there. So the India's largest group of small land holding farmers is in Nashik. Some of them were there in that program. To name it, Mr. Abasab Kale, who was not directly a farmer, but of course someone connected very closely to them. And he said, "Let us go to Nashik and you do this entire thing with the farmers." So then I go to Nashik for 2 days. Then I'm now teaching blockchain in Marathi by taking leaves from my corporate job. And then when the farmers tell me that, wait, you can help us to bring about traceability, you can use the traceability information to help create credit score for us, because in India, farmers don't have credit scores. And then they had this whole roadmap. That's when I realized that, okay, this is something that I could do now. And then that's when I quit my job with PwC with the World Bank. And that's the birth of the startup, an agro trust. Yeah.
Wow, I love the fact that you went there and you were actually addressing problems and sort of co-creating solutions with their inputs rather than having a piece of tech and then trying to force fit it into some problem to see if it works or not. So I think you're sort of reaping the benefits of that, isn't it? Great, that's such a
Yeah.
good story. But I wanted to know, in terms of scalability, of course, you're doing it now across maybe other places as well. Obviously, we are in Australia, and are there applications that you know of in Australia, or how is it sort of seen in this environment?
There was a chance of technical collaboration with Australia also in one place. I'll tell you how. So what do we do in agriculture? So we digitize the entire value chain from farmers, inventory management, uh, labeling, right until the final product. So we end up printing QR codes, and I'll share those screens with you, which you can display. We end up printing QR codes on end products. So even if you are purchasing chilies for 40 rupees, 30 rupees, you would find a QR code on top of it. What happens when you scan that QR code? The moment you scan the QR code, you see the entire information in three parts. First is know your farmer. So farmer photograph, from which farmer it has come, and the farmer details. Know your food. So the people who are conscious about the food that they're eating, whether it is really fresh, on which date it was harvested, whether it has certifications, let's say it could be fair trade certification. There are so many certifications within food. All of those certifications which are relevant are shown live. And the third, which is that is the blockchain philosophy power. It is, if you have purchased something for 40 rupees, we can show that out of this, the farmer is getting, let's say, 15 rupees or 20 rupees. And that what is happening with the rest of the money, then we are able to show the demarcation of that entire money part. And we have so far printed 5.2 million QR codes across the past 2 years. And then we realized that this could be replicated in a cotton way also, because I come from Marathwada, Aurangabad, and over there most of the farmer suicides are for cotton farmers. And then cotton is a very, cotton itself has a very larger explore. The entire story of cotton is a story of exploitation when it comes to the Western world, but it's not much dissimilar to what we face in Maharashtra also, because the cotton farmers face extremely bad uh, situations. Now, I told the farmers of Nashik, what we are doing over here in fruits and vegetables, can we do it in cotton for the place that I belong from? So Mr. Vilas Shinde, the farmer leader over there, he said that, okay, but think end to end, because we have to digitize the whole chain. So what do you end up digitizing in a cotton part? It's a t-shirt. In fact, I could show you some t-shirts. There are many lying around over here. So every t-shirt comes with a QR code.
Let's see
And
it.
Yeah, if you just give me a second then. So
Okay.
this is our joint venture. You can type in a code there, sample code KEBPCY, caps lock,
E-
KEBPCY. So then if you scan the QR code on the t-shirts, then you can see the entire journey of where it is coming from, who is getting how much money. So the entire traceability and transparency within the cotton aspect.
This
So
is
far we have,
absolutely brilliant.
yeah, so far we've sold 50,000 t-shirts. The way that we as a technology provider earn money is a per QR code basis. That's also transparent. How much the farmers earn, that's also transparent. And Amir Khan, in fact, came to the farmers' facility in Nashik, and he did a small documentary on this, which will soon be released.
That's
On his own. Yeah,
I'm absolutely like mind
yeah,
blown by this, because there is, we talk a lot about all this, no, like in terms of speaking the right things and doing the
yeah,
right things in liberal circles,
yeah,
buying trade and eating organic and compensating people fairly for their labor. But this actually kind of makes it possible
yeah.
beyond words, which is absolutely great.
And that's what blockchain is supposed to do. See, blockchain, as United Nations said, has now raised questions. Okay, I'll briefly talk about the other revolution that blockchain is bringing. If you have trust coming from mathematics and not from people, then how the world changes. And that is called Web 3. Currently, you and me are interacting on Web 2.0. So what is Web 1.0? We only read static information on pages, let's say 15 years ago. Yahoo, Rediff, all of that. Web 2.0 is when we are writing information also into the internet. Right now, we are writing information on the internet because the servers are recording our video interactions. Or if you are doing a Facebook post, you are giving information.
Right.
So the right part. But the thing is, there's a caveat. All of that information that you write is owned by someone else. They are the ones who monetize it. And the way that it happens is when you go to the internet, you and everyone is homeless. We have to live in someone else's home. So I have to take a Gmail ID. So I'm taking Gmail, I'm living in Gmail's house. Then I'm using that to log into Facebook. Then I go to the second floor of Mark Zuckerberg. But I don't live on the internet as such, right? I'm already always living in someone else's home when I'm using any services. So Web 3.0 is an internet based on blockchain in which you are the owners of your information. So in fact, Uber India, the upper management, Uber CEO and everyone, they invited me for a talk. Why? Because they were very worried of something happening in Bangalore. So in Bangalore, there is a brilliant three-member led blockchain initiative called DRIFE, DRIFE. And if you go to the Bangalore airport, just download that app next time and use that for your cab services. Why? Because these three people, I have just created a blockchain service which does everything that Uber does, but it doesn't charge the driver at all. So let's say if you are paying 100 rupees for an Uber or Ola ride, out of that 40 rupees goes to around 40 rupees goes back to the app, that service, the whether Ola or Uber. Now, if you remove that 40 rupees, suddenly there is almost a twice increase in the profit or in my savings as a customer. And this is something which had already happened in US when an Uber driver with a computer science degree, just like me, left Uber to create a blockchain platform. So all of these aggregators, Ola, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, they are aggregators. Facebook earns money by content, but it doesn't create content. You, me, and everyone else create content, and we make Mark Zuckerberg rich. And that's a very fraudulent model. So there are 6 social media platforms that I've documented in my book, in which I've just begun. In which, if my post goes viral, the advertisers' money will come directly to me because there is no Mark Zuckerberg to pay money to. TikTok, for example,
Yes.
there are ways. So that the entire revenue models are shifting. So that's another blockchain revolution. So when it comes to Australia part, in fact, as I was saying, Australia has been trying to do this because I've been interacting with them since I was in government. And there's this company in Australia called Horizon State. I reached out to them. They were doing not just electoral voting on blockchain, but imagine managing your entire municipality through voting. So, for example, if there are funds, the citizens can see how much funds there are, and their citizens through voting can choose whether to use those funds for repairing a road or building a park.
Oh my goodness. Next
Yeah.
level accountability and transparency.
Yeah, in fact, it's you're letting the citizens now run the government, right? So those kind of pilots happened. They were slowly getting scale, and the largest crowdfunding project in history of Australia was Horizon State, because everyone within that district funded them very crazily. Now they're looking out ways to scale, but the barriers to implementing this are human barriers, not technical barriers.
Right.
So you have to take everything with a kind of pinch of a salt, that why is it not getting scaled? Because the answer is we are as a blockchain changes the way the society works, and there's always friction.
And this
Uh,
is the question I had when you were talking about the farmers
yeah,
and agriculture. And, you know, I mean, sort of agriculture's come a little bit more into the limelight, obviously, after the farmer protests and all of that. And there are various, I suppose, stakeholders who may not want that level of transparency, may not want that level of agency to lie in the hands of every piece of the puzzle.
yeah.
So, what then is the way around that?
So the only way around that is you can't do it directly, in a sense that for everyone you have to let the farmers do something, and then you meet them midway.
What
So
does that mean?
yeah, so in India, the cooperative movement for farmers is happening since 1920s. But that's how you have the Amul story. Cooperative is farmers come together,
Right.
form a cooperative, work together. But there are limitations to it. So something happened in 2010. I think 2009 or 2010. The everyone there, based on a committee report, Saxena committee report, I think they realized that there is something very seriously wrong with cooperative. We need a new model. So they came up with something called as a farmer producer company. What is a farmer company? In that farmer producer company, only farmers can be the shareholders. First thing, if I am not a farmer, I cannot invest in that company. I cannot gain any stakes. The other is, regardless of my shareholding, landholding as a farmer, I have only one equal vote. In a private limited company, if I have 51% stakes, I control
Right.
everything. It doesn't happen over there. And then they built in these special rules so that they would learn from the failures of the cooperative system, as well as the pros and cons of NGO, uh, private limited, LLP, limited liability partnerships. They've studied all of these associations and created a new association. So within a farmer producer company, you have hundreds and thousands of farmers who come together, and they are the ones now pushing through. And they are our clients, you could say. That's where we help them. We help them everything
It
from logo
seems
design, website design.
the more democratic sort of a,
Yeah.
like a true democracy.
Yeah,
It
in a true
seems
true
like
democracy. So for
Very
example, Mr.
interesting.
Bilas Shinde, 13,000 farmers vote for him annually, and he is re-elected to be the chairman.
Mm.
He can be removed from the chairman if the votes are differently. And everything is voting based. Now that is where we focus. In India, within the past 10 years, already 10,000 farmer producer companies have emerged.
Which
And
state are we talking about?
all Indian states, primarily in Maharashtra, because out of those 10,000, I think 3 to 4,000 belong to Maharashtra alone. So Maharashtra has the bulk of it. But you would find at least 10 to 100 farmer producer companies all across in every state of India. We help the farmers run their business like a proper business and not as a charity case by giving them very cheap software modules for registering themselves, for HR management, for inventory management, for labels. And those are the set of software modules which we monetize. And sometimes if you, but in the case of t-shirts, there's a lot of digitization that happens, but we kept it very simple that we will be getting paid based on per QR code basis. For other fruits and vegetables tracking, it's a per of how much software that you're using. So that you are ensuring that the benefits of technology, the most advanced technologies, are also flowing down and not just, getting up. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a sort of tangential question to this, that obviously all of this seems extremely inspiring and sort of the next level of growth where sort of tech and social good kind of can come together. Now, among young people in India, maybe even outside, of course, among the NRI communities, there's always this desire to get involved in India, to help India, to do something in India, to do something for India. This seems like a space that is only going to sort of explode in terms of its
Yeah.
application. What are some of the ways in which people can invest or get involved in this sort of business?
So the first and most primary way is that, let's say you are purchasing your fruits and vegetable from a corporate supermarket as opposed to from a farmer producer company. That's where we actually the QR codes help. We do the QR codes because we want the customers to know that this is where it's coming from. So supporting the initiatives which are meaningfully right, and there's not just a lot of greenwashing which is happening. We're also working heavily into carbon credits. I've done a lot of coding over there also, but the thing is to differentiate between all of this major narratives of sustainability, sustainable development goals by United Nations, and separating that from how much is actually affecting on the ground, how much benefits it actually happens. I can burn 5 carbon credits right now, and I will say that yes, I am offsetting all of my airplane travel for last 2 months. Does it really mean it? Mean much? Those are the questions. So first, introspection would be needed of whether we are doing something good for actual change or just for the sake of it, for feeling so. And the other ways is the farmer producer companies would always be needing assistance when it is market, whether it is a more diversification. And so, for example, one of our clients called Project Hum, it's a restaurant in South Bombay, and they purchase only from farmer producer companies. They're all of their ingredients. Now, what we've done for them is reverse traceability. If you go to the restaurant, on every table there will be a QR code. If you scan that QR code, it's not for menu. It basically tells you where the different ingredients have been sourced from.
That's really interesting. And I know
Mhm.
it's an interesting idea for these times,
Yeah.
where the sort of social consciousness has also reached a level where people are starting to care about these things.
Yeah.
And
And that's the right time. Because if people don't ask the question that why
exactly.
are we not seeing, then if not now, then it won't happen. And you see, there's also an element that's where you have to realize that blockchain actually makes the trust possible. But it was possible to show this digitally earlier also. That's when you realize that you have to use the hype of blockchain also. Because if you don't use the hype of a technology, you see, there are so many people saying that, oh, this is hype, that is hype, that is hype. Okay, of course, I know that is hype. Are you going to use that hype for a good purpose? Or are you just going to trying to sound smarter by, saying that, oh, that's just an hype? Of course. But if you can use the hype to say, now let
Actually,
us, you have to digitize it, then they would do some things which they could have done earlier, but they were not. But just because they are swept up in the tsunami of the hype, they have to do it. which is how things happen in the government also or anywhere else. You have to
Right.
orchestrate so many things.
It's a merry dance, isn't it, of various
Yeah.
elements that come together. All right,
Yeah.
let's move a little bit out of this into your work for this Dalai Lama Fellow sounds very intriguing. I know you
Yeah.
said it came about because of the series of workshops that you were doing. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you're doing with it right now? Is it sort of an annual fellowship or?
Yeah. So it has a lifelong commitment attached to it, and there's an annual, it has a year-long training that happens. So the way that you get selected is you apply for it, you talk about all of the work that you've been doing, then they will audit it, they will interview you. And from 2019, my batch, 3 Indians were selected, and it was a total batch of 25 people, and 40 countries were eligible to apply for it. So out of those 25, 3 were from India itself. And all that I had pushed for was the work that I had been doing. That yes, this is the workshops in technology knowledge dissemination that I've been trying to do, and that's what gets you selected. Now, after I got selected, that's when I said that. Then that's when I actually kind of I did not want to prima facie put in my ideology. If you visit Dalai Lama Fellows page right now, you will see that they have asked for a vision, and my vision statement begins with, as Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar said, today's society needs, and then there's an entire statement. That statement happened after I became a Dalai Lama fellow,
Mm,
because another statement that I wanted to bring through my work, with whether it's a British Council fellowship or like I have 5 6 fellowships, all of those 5 6 fellowships are happening because I want to put the work ahead, and then I talk about where I come from, because I'm not saying that you should not be talking about where you come from, what's my background, what's my social background. But today the thing is that uh, it if you don't if you're not careful enough, you can just end up being tokenized. And there are people happy enough to tokenize themselves to unlimited degrees. I just happen to not be one of them, and I don't want others to be one of them, because then it limits your entire existence. Then you're not a blockchain expert, then you're just a Dalit blockchain expert. Of course, I'm not. I'm a global blockchain expert. Why wouldn't I be? So, why would you limit yourselves just for some one short term gain? I'm just talking, yeah, people should be selfish. People should actually, in a good way, people should achieve for everything, but there's a way to do it. And if you, it's a matter of where you put in at what time. So while gaining the Dalai Lama fellowship, it was all just about the work that I've been doing. The moment I got there, they asked me for which vision statement I should show there. That's when I say that, okay, this is where I come from and this is my vision statement. So Dalai Lama fellowship was also instrumental because after I went there, it's you go to University of Virginia twice in US, you interact with all of those fellows. That's when you have those discussions regarding how complex it is to navigate technology and other terrains, while fighting with the backgrounds that you come from. You do all of that later, when because that's what makes it more meaningful also in a very powerful way, compared to if I just restrict myself under a cocoon of an identity and rely on that to transport me as much as far away as it takes me, but I would be again at the mercy of the winds. That's what Baba Sahib said, right? You have to kind of open your entire wingspan, and that's when you actually break the cocoon. This is what I am, this is one of those things that I am, and that's when your words have more uh, weight to it. And I've learned this from mistakes. I have not learned this by following or criticizing other people. I've learned this by mistakes. When I was very vocal on these issues, I got offered a PhD in Göttingen University in 2014. But then I was happy. But then I realized if my interest and all of my talents are with mathematics or evolution or any other subject where concerned with science, why am I only getting offered philosophy for sociology as in Dalit studies? Because I said, wait a minute. Because I had been through those things in 2014. I had been vocal about them also. I've documented this. And then I realized that yes, uh, there is a way to navigate our identity, and Dalai Lama Fellowship was a way to do that in for once. British Council was entirely with the policy work that I had done with blockchain. That's what got me in. I was asked to present my work in UK Parliament, in House of Lords, in House of Commons. I spent an entire day at the UK Prime Minister's residence. I sat on the chair which Winston Churchill used to sit in and decide. what to do with World War II while sipping whiskey. So, and then were those spaces when I begin a speech with Jai Bhim. That's much more meaningful, right? Rather than saying, please select me because of. I'm not kind of trying to do any kind of mockery. I'm just saying that there is a we have to understand how the world also operates. We might want the world to look at us in a certain way, but what if that gaze itself limits our entire soul?
Let's just
Because
move
I,
back a little bit.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
jumped right into it.
yeah. I realize it. Yeah,
Let's just take 10 steps back. When
yeah,
I got introduced to you on Facebook, which is the great introducer of,
yeah,
interesting people and interesting ideas, one of the first things that I read was, all the stuff that you were doing on caste identity and on some of the things that you've spoken of right now, of sort of this tokenism
yeah,
and the single lens, and almost to a point of being fetishized as an identity, as another way to oppress. You were writing on round round table
Roundtable India.
on Roundtable India, and you were sharing some of those. And I find that, some of those things that you spoke about as ideas have sort of come into play so much as action in your life since then. So, this journey that you say that you've learned through your mistakes, or you've learned through maybe observation of how the real world is operating and where you want to be seen and where you want to see yourself, and what you had said earlier, that you don't want to speak truth to power, you want to speak power to power.
Yeah,
And I think that's a very different ideology, and it's something that I think is quite inspiring. So, if you'd like to talk about, a little
yeah,
bit about that journey.
yeah. So, my parents come from villages. They had their hardships. My father was born an orphan. He came to Aurangabad. My mother also. Then they met. They married, and Aurangabad has this entire history of anti-caste struggles throughout, because that's where Baba Saheb Ambedkar decided to build the People's Education Society. Many hostels, offered many scholarships, which is what paved the way for the first generation to people actually do something, get jobs, get education, and we call ourselves the second generation. In many cases, of course, it's still a minority, but uh, now that entire struggle, which is happening since decades, you're just suddenly born into it. So from the moment of your birth, you've assimilated like all the uh, you could say the energy and the enthusiasm and the wholesome attitudes behind that, how people actually operate it in a good way, and you're just kind of absorbing it for as much as possible, whether or not you want to, you're getting exposed to it, right? So that's one great thing that does happen. And in my case, that did happen in my case. And I was learning so much. So my father used to tell me that we had this bad trend. Initially, it was a good trend when we were writing this new genre called Dalit autobiographies. And in 1990s, he said it just became worse because now everyone's writing Dalit autobiography. And it's now become a competition of how much you glorify and how much you, it's a competition of pains basically. And then my father was like of the opinion that why do people do this? In fact, someone from my own family, a close family member, has written a Dalit autobiography, and then my father stopped talking to him for a good amount of time because because he says, why are you doing this? In fact, whenever I used to introduce my father in stages or used to speak about him or my mother, he was very clear that I should not be saying things which I just said. In fact, right now he would be very angry, which I said that he's an orphan, he came from village. He said, no, you speak about the things that I've done. I've done laser surgeries in brain cancer in Switzerland. I've been invited to Germany to perform surgeries. I've removed uh, record weighing tumors from bodies for after performing 15 hours of surgery. Those are the things you mention about me. You don't get to speak even as my son regarding what I've been through. Because I've realized that what the world respects is this. And then, in fact, there's a Facebook post, in fact, which he read in 2014, in which I talk about his life journey, and he got really pissed off. He called me asking to delete it, basically saying that why are you writing on that portion? That is my hardships. You write, you should focus on my good parts, on my success, because why else am I doing all of this? It's because you should now carry it ahead. And then yeah, I said okay, that makes sense. And then at the same time I realized that when you open your identity, you have to defend that identity also. And in the in that transition phase where you defend a community, there is this transition in which you don't know whether you are defending the community or you're just kind of defeating, you're assimilating some parts of that into your own sense of identity of who you are. And I wrote about it. Then I realized that that's when in 2015 with Kufir Nalgondwar, Naren Bedide, and Anuram Das sir, who are running the Roundtable India. That's when I started. So if you look at my first article, I identify as a Dalit, and I spoke about that. Then I realized, wait a minute, maybe there are just some words and conventions I have to use too. But then there's an article that I clearly write later on in which I specifically speak about just me as a human being. And there's this. So the founder of Dalit Panther, in fact, Mr. Raja Dhale, gave a very great statement. He said that Dalitism is not the final vision, humanism is the final vision. Now imagine who is saying that. It is the founder of Dalit Panther who is saying afterwards that Dalitism is, what is Dalitism? There's no such thing as Dalitism. Humanism is the final goal, and you aim for that. And then you realize like there's a statement by Baba Ambedkar which all of us know verbatim, which is cultivation of mind should be the ultimate aim of human existence. But what does it really mean? Why is he saying that? It's because if caste is not just something which would operate externally in my material resources, constraining it, oppressing me in the slurs and insults. Nah, not just that. If you allow it to, if you, and it has to be allowed in, if you allow it to enter you mind also, then it will restrict you an entire being. And then as an immune response, you may try to defend yourself and try to identify yourself in a negative way, that no, this is this solid identity, this block of a people, and with a certain shared characteristics. And that is when race is created, right? So everything should have been reversed. Like everyone is a human being. The people who are actually doing the oppression, actually hoarding resources, actually hoarding so many resources of uncounted value, which is creating starvation and oppression everywhere else, who should be questioning whether they are human beings or not. The moment you yourself try to identify, oh wait, am I a special version of a human being? Okay, I'm not a Homo sapien. Maybe I'm this Homo Dalit sapien. And what does that even mean? But that's how you start looking at yourself, and that's where all the problems arise.
You
And
know,
it
this
makes a
article
problem.
of yours, I really want to share that as well because
Yeah.
it really it just challenges so many sort of established norms and notions.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a very, very important, it's a very seminal work in that way that it really challenges a lot of narratives. And I had, this one, I had remembered it then, and then when I was going to talk to you, I went back to read it. And then, the Madhuri Nagesh Babu's caste certificate,
Yeah.
it says, "My caste certificate shall become the foreword of the new history that I shall write."
Yeah. See, it's a forward, and you have to write the entire book. And that kind of assertion, then suddenly what happens? You have all these bad examples in front of you, where somehow the identity becomes a stepping stone, identity becomes a way to, if you're sitting on a round table and if you're saying that no, this is my identity and that's why you take cognizance, then you have to realize that you have to play by some rules, because you're already playing by the rules that okay, you're allowed to speak because you're a certain identity. Then how do you defy those rules again? You don't defy any rules. You defy the rules when you actually bring the table to the conversation and then say, okay, you sit on this table now. I'm not bringing something to the table. I'm bringing the table now to the conversation. That's when you and there's no passing the mic, as I said. I mean, that's just so cute. I can't hate it. It's just because it's so cute, childishly cute. I don't want to pass the mic. I can have a live concert DJ right behind you, and I'll gather all the audiences to me. I'll be rather a rock star than just passing the mic person beside you, because why not? The moment you say pass on the mic, but you're still on their platforms, and just, I'm not saying ask them, but you're always asking for things, and
But
there's
Gaurav,
nothing wrong in asking.
can I
But
just say that not everybody is also a Gaurav Sumanj. Not
yeah,
everybody has what you have, and not everybody possibly, has this force of conviction as well, right? And this
yeah,
force of conviction that you have, I think it comes from a lot that you have yourself experienced and seen. And that sort of forged the way that you are able to think about things. And I think it's exceptional. Like I was telling you earlier, of course, there is identity, of course, there is all of that. But some people transcend identity. Some people,
yeah,
like, they're not confined or restricted by what the world wants them to be. And they can be role models for anyone. Like today, what you're doing, you are a role model for anybody. Of course, there is a place in which you will be seen in the context of where you come from. That aside, you are inspiring for anybody, including, I think, my son, and I should show him all of this. And we keep talking about the problems of today are sort of the jobs of tomorrow. And in that sense, it's almost like, what are you here to solve, and what are you here to make better, and what are you here to ease in this world? And in
yeah,
many ways, that's what you're doing. You're easing lives, you're easing livelihoods for people through what you're doing. And that's universal. That is
yeah.
beyond any passing the mic or building a stage or any of that. Um, I wanted to talk, since you did speak about your father, and I know you were influenced deeply by what sort of his baby work ethic and all of that. What are some of those things that you kind of see carrying forward through your own work? And not just your father, maybe even your mother, because I know she was
Yeah.
also an influence and is an influence.
So with I'll begin with my mother. If I read anything today, it's because the entire credit goes to my mother, because she's the one who reads everything that comes to her, and she's the one, in fact, who got me interested into complicated subjects at a very young age. For example, DNA, genetics. I had offer in GA to do an entire fully funded scholarship course from South Korea at the age of 14, because she'd already just been teaching me DNA for time pass. She's a doctor and a physiology MD. And so that understanding that yes, I can, and all of these complicated subjects of physiology, genetics, they are so interesting, evolution, that come from her. And my father is, as a kind of, again, as a, like the word that you use, like a force of nature, that I think it would apply more to him, because you can see him navigating everything, all of his social barriers, all of his professional barriers, with certain energy which was simply unknown. For example, he was the one who erected the preamble in the government college. He had these portraits of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Phule, Shivaji Maharaj placed across the government hospital premises. Because I had seen him do all of that. I had seen him getting invited to Germany and Switzerland, all of that, just while maintaining a sense of casualness about it. That yes, of course, we have to do these things, and like not make it a kind of a big, it's not righteousness. It's just like casualness. Like
Like a
if you,
heaviness. There
yeah,
was no heaviness around it.
yeah, there was no heaviness in it. It just was like as a matter of fact. And it is that matter of fact activism which is most important. That you just have to do activism as a matter of fact. If you do it as a matter of, if you have to do so much and you have to talk about so much, and there's a big gap between what to talk and what to do, what is that extra thing than filling it up? It is to placate my own ego, right? And then
Sort of
that is where I hit my problem.
living your life with radical honesty,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, in fact, that's the way. So that's the one thing I learned from him. And then I saw how just last week, his students had a symposium named after him, because my father loved doing a surgery called the stapes surgery. The innermost bone within the ear is called stapes. So if you can replace that, that's step surgery. He loved doing that, very complicated. Yeah, a surgeon has to use both their hands while doing it, and it has to be an open. It cannot be an endoscopy based surgery because it's very skillful, very difficult to do. He loved teaching it also, and then he created this sense of comfort with his people, and that is what helps me to run a team. So we are close to 20 people right now, and when I'm speaking from you right now, I live in the same flat as my developers. The girls, I have a flat just adjacent to this apartment. So we have the opposite thing from work from home. We even, the that you heard, that's another developer coming back from the gym right now. And we have our office 1 kilometer apart. So how do you build a team? How do you respect each other as colleagues? Because my developers currently get offered salaries which would shame Silicon Valley developer salaries, because that's how trained and experienced they are. And they still don't choose to go there because they can see this vision. They have this entire philosophy, shared philosophy guiding them. How do you nurture that? All of those things I've seen him do. So the startup is possible because of my parents, what I learned from them. My reading, my outlook of life is possible because of them. And yeah, that's something that I don't wish to see extinguished with their deaths. And I'm just looking at myself as a vessel for some important ideas that could be shared through my actions or my writing or even documentation such as these, which are very important.
Brilliant. Finally,
Yeah.
advice for younger people. Now I'm going to make you feel not so young by asking you to give advice for young. But no, really, if you were to distill, I mean, you've had so many learnings from failure, from success, from collaboration, from audacity.
Yeah.
What are the lessons if you had to give younger people today wanting to make a difference in the world?
So the two things which have really helped me throughout is kindness and curiosity. And I'll talk about kindness in a broader way, because if you're not kind to others, then you're not going to be kind to yourself also. And if you're really aiming for bigger things, then you have to be ready to fall really hard on your faces, whether it is financially or ideologically, because those failures will happen. Because if you want to try, then you have to. And how do you absorb those failures? It is again kindness which helps you. If you're not kind to others, you won't be kind to yourself, and then it's just the worst way to do things. And if you're not kind, when I'm saying kind, I'm just saying a broader level of empathy. When you just try to understand more how different people would, I'm not talking about forgiving. That's a very bad way to put it across. Kindness in just terms of the empathy kind, because that helps you.
Compassion, maybe.
Yeah, that helps you in every way, 360-degree. If I'm kind to my client and I can understand their problems, then I can see, oh, wait a minute, this is their problem. Maybe this could be the solution. It helps me in problem solving also. So curiosity in a broader context, not just curiosity just in one way, but curiosity just to explore things that are not necessarily just part of your supposed to do list. So the best thing to do is not to have any supposed to do list at all. And a lot of this has been shaped by, because I've been through many fellowships, and like Dalai Lama fellowship, it has its own syllabus called head, heart, and hands. So one important thing that I learned over there was having an agenda less presence. During my MBA at the most premier institute in India, I was taught that you need to have an agenda for every meeting, pinpointed. These are the deliverables. You grab this, you negotiate this, and then you come back, you seal the deal, kind of thing. And then there's this Dalai Lama then comes and says, no, you need, for a really larger engagement, you need to have an agenda less presence, because that's when you absorb things as much as you possible. So that's the most critical part. And agenda-less presence is what helps me to understand my clients' queries, understand my developers' problems, understand my investors' problems, what they're coming from, and then try to be a better person in that way. Yeah. So,
Being before doing.
yeah, being before doing. Yeah, well, nicely said. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. This has been really enlightening. And actually, there's so many new things that are going on in the world that I'm glad that we are being able to share through this platform. And I'm sure this will not be the last time we'll have you on Pause with Nandini, because there's still a lot of unfinished business with you. I still need to ask
Yeah.
you about many other things that you're doing. But for the moment, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nandini, for this wonderful opportunity.